Grinners, if you'd like to see this full show and watch live in future, click the link below and sign up now for LNG Gold. Enjoy the video. All right. Main event time for Fave Fight Friday, folks. I hope you've enjoyed this. I apologize for the weirdness at the start with the StreamYard. I apologize for the for any complications along the way, so on and so forth. But it's time for the main event. And it comes from the great Tope Suicida, who is only fair that he have a match on here. Shout out to Tope for all his work editing Late Night Grin stuff and helping out with the LNG Gold launch. He suggested we go back to April 2nd, 2022, WrestleMania 38, the Saturday portion of that show, if it was worth noting. Steve Austin and his return to the ring after 19 years away, opposite Kevin Owens. And this is, again, I used the word a lot earlier, unique. This is certainly unique. And this is one of those great examples of one of the things I love about covering pro wrestling is often you're just wrong about things. And I was just completely wrong about this. I misread this kind of play call entirely. So before we go any further, I think it goes without saying, if you're watching this, I think you know, but I don't think anyone has an intention of praising Vince McMahon's creative regime at this point. I think we're all very happy to just move on, and if we talk about it in a negative fashion, and rightly so. However, I do think it goes without saying that this night of WrestleMania, and this thing in particular, is probably the last triumph of that regime. And we'll say that regime because there are 1,000,001 people involved in it, and we'll leave it at that and move on and talk about it. But the reason is, I was convinced there would be no match. And the reason I was convinced was, if he was going to wrestle, as reported, they would advertise it. Even if he was going to do a 4-minute match, they would advertise a Steve Austin match. They're not going to do that unannounced. Clearly, I was wrong. But not only was I wrong about what they would and wouldn't do, I was wrong to even think that was the correct play. Because what they managed to do here, I think, actually doesn't get enough credit, in that their approach allowed for a very, very special moment. Not only did it erase any expectations, which, let's be real, did an awful lot for Austin and positioned him to succeed, because really anything he did physically was going to be a bonus, right? Because it wasn't advertised. It allowed him to completely work from a blank slate. We didn't have 3 months of a match graphic of Austin wondering, what's he going to be able to do? What kind of match can he have? Will it be a real match? He didn't have to deal with that because they never announced it. So he could just go out there and have fun, and everything felt like a bonus. I don't think you can overestimate how important that was here. It also allowed for that kind of, just for that raw excitement, right? That raw kind of almost surreal atmosphere of the impromptu setup and the almost, oh shit, this is going to happen, which I think is best captured by a particular moment, which I'll circle later. But it's a very, very unique setup. For anyone unaware, I assume most of you are, the deal here was that Owens had been talking trash about Texas. He invited Austin to be a guest on the Kevin Owens Show at WrestleMania. Austin on Twitter the next day accepted with a video from home. And then, here we were. This was the main event of night one. This show was very memorable. Had Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair, had Cody Rhodes return to WWE opposite Seth Rollins. And anyway, here we go. Owens does some heel work, cuts a promo on people. They are completely with it from start to finish. Then the glass shatters and the place explodes. And I mean, it explodes. They do some back and forth in the talk show setting, and it's all fun and such. But the big reveal, of course, is that Owens has tricked Austin and always had one intention only, which is to challenge him to a match here and now. And it would not just be any match, it'd be a no-holds-barred match. And I just can't overstate, Steve Austin just has this incredible facial expression as this whole thing is coming to be. He's totally still, and he's stern and serious without moving a muscle. And this whole thing is coming together around him, and he's just still. And it captures so much, and Owens even highlights it. And I almost wonder, I don't think he even needed to, but I think it was best he did in some ways. But it's like there's so much to what Austin's doing, and he's not doing anything. There's like a caution, there's nerves, there's a hesitation. You know, Owens even paints it as fear, and I don't think Austin even shies away from that idea of like he hasn't done this in 19 years, right? And it's electric. I can't overstate it. And then he paints the picture and he talks about, his first match being in Dallas, and here he is back in 2022. And it's all coming together, and you still don't fully believe what is about to happen. And then you get the moment. This is what I was referencing earlier when I said there's a moment that kind of captures why this works so well, I think. They go to their separate corners, and the camera takes it zooms in on Austin, who has this sort of, honestly, has the look of a man who's thinking, oh shit, this is really about to happen. He does these, like, he warms himself up very, very, very briefly. And you kind of see him mentally process, like, well, I've spent 19 years wondering if this would be a mistake. It's time to find out, now or never, right? And it is just intoxicating. My goodness, it's wonderful. I don't think it gets any better than that in terms of vibe and feel. And away they go. And look, mechanically, is this Flair Steamboat? No, who gives a shit, right? They trade right hands. Austin certainly has some rust, to put it politely. He's definitely nervous. You can feel his nerves, and it actually adds to the match in that way. He does a cool deal, a smart deal, in fact, where the stomps are a little slower at first, and he kind of leans into it, just lets the people guide him through, and he lets the crowd chant the stomps, which gives him a chance to catch his breath and just get comfortable. And he does get more comfortable as he goes. Along the way, Kevin Owens, of course, is of great assistance in that regard, as he is bumping big at every turn. He does like a ridiculous bump on the buckle. And Austin, of course, being Austin, makes himself more comfortable by drinking some beers along the way. He seems to warm up, get into it. He throws an awesome lariat on the outside, which Kevin takes the exact bump you're imagining for. But the thing is, and this is where wrestling is fascinating, is like this stuff doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? Like Austin's perceived vulnerability and the fact that it feels like he shouldn't be doing this medically makes the match like infinitely better, because KO cuts him off by like posting him, and Austin kind of goes down like clumsily, and you can hear people gasp. And it happens every time Steve takes offense in this match. The people are like concerned, you can feel it. It's just a very unique atmosphere. And let's be real, Owens' offense in this is very brief, as it should be. No one's there to see Steve sell all night. I mean, that's just not the point of this deal. But when he gets his stuff in, Austin sells it, and the way that it's perceived is like, oh no, it's very, very powerful. They brawl through the people. And there's some frenzied brawling, which looks an awful lot better than the brawling they started with, which is an example of Austin kind of getting into it. And memorably, and I think kind of a signature moment in this match, is Austin takes a suplex on the floor, which is quite the visual that I think will stick with us all for some time. And then, of course, he's back on offense soon enough. KO takes that big bump on the announce table. They do the business on the ramp, including a couple of suplexes from Austin. He drives him up the ramp, I should note, on the gimmick he comes to the ring with. But the big twist, to keep him honest, to keep the thing grounded, and to ensure that this does not completely leave the framework of a real match, whatever that means. And I think it's one of the smarter things in the entire match, is he feeds a KO stunner in the last couple minutes there. KO hooks him with a stunner, and the people gasp, 1, 2, kick. I mean, it would have been unfathomable that KO would have won, and everyone knew that. But that doesn't mean that they didn't bite on the false finish anyway, because that's the power of pro wrestling, right? So it's like, it's awesome. And again, it gives the match just enough of an edge to be a real thing you can sink your teeth into, and not just like a pure spectacle, which, let's be real, it's a spectacle. But I think there's enough grit to this and enough toughness that I think Austin, it seems that he was very proud of this match for that reason. I think it felt true and honest to who Steve Austin was as a wrestler. It's a victory lap, but it's more than enough. It's more than close enough to a true wrestling match to be suitable for his legacy, I think. Of course, Austin fires back soon after. And with that, you get the glorious post-match celebration, which is legitimately, I would argue, one of the most triumphant moments in the company's history. Again, there's a lot of layers and context that comes with that, which you can feel however you want to. I understand, but Steve Austin celebrating in this setting after being with visible relief on his face that he didn't just embarrass himself is quite the deal. And it's like a 6-minute post-match of him just celebrating. It's quite incredible to watch. And of course, for those of us that have followed Kevin Owens, it's a different kind of triumph alongside that because he just got to wrestle Steve Austin in a WrestleMania main event. And better yet, it will be remembered fondly. 2 years later here, we're talking about it as such. And very, very special. An incredible piece of business. I actually think it doesn't get enough credit for how cool it is and how much of a triumph it was creatively and how well they positioned Austin to surprise people in a positive way and to set him up in a spot where we went, oh my God, he did a suplex, which I don't think would have existed if they announced he's going to have a wrestling match. This whole thing is like a total hit. It's not a classic wrestling match in the sense that headlock takeovers. That's not the point. But it is an all-time moment. And I think it probably deserves more love for how well this was handled. I think there's a lot of versions of this that are not nearly as satisfying. So there it is. Kevin Owens, Steve Austin, WrestleMania 38, Saturday, of course, night one of that very event. Obviously, I think it goes without saying that I recommend it. I think most of you have seen it, but it's worth a rewatch because it is a glorious, glorious piece of business. All right, before I go out here, folks, next week's shows. My Match Monday, we have Frexium and Javon Evans versus the Rascals. We have the Great O'Khan versus Gabe Kidd. We have Julia versus Sakurai from Marigold. We have Josh Alexander and Nick Nemeth. 1 hour Iron Man match. And we have Watanabe and Monet from New Japan Pro Wrestling presents, I believe it's Capital Collision. Then, 1 week from today, Fave Fight Friday, we have Danny Burch and Oni Lorcan versus the Undisputed Era. We have Arn Anderson versus Alex Wright from Slamboree 95. We have Ryoto Hama versus Minoru Suzuki. We have Yamashita versus Miyu Watanabe. Tokyo Joshi Program Princess. And then we have JBL versus The Undertaker. No Mercy 2004. That's what's ahead of us. Thank you for joining me. Keep grinning. All hail. Enjoy this outro, folks. Bye.